Good evening and welcome to DJNTV tonight. It is Tuesday night, and tonight I am joined by the one and only Mark Beecher. Mark, good evening.
I can't believe you dragged me off my couch, John.
I know. You're usually watching and giving heckling from the crowd. The guys up in the balcony. But tonight,
me?
I'm being facetious there a little bit. But tonight we're lucky that we have you on to learn a little bit about who Mark Beecher is and how you do a lot of stuff, because we got a lot of ground we're going to be covering tonight. Before we get to that, though, tonight's shows, the interview shows, are brought to you by DJ Event Planner. If you're looking for an online tool to use for communicating with your clients and your specifically your wedding couples and such, DJEventPlanner.com. Check it out. They've got some great web tools and a lot of things that are going to help you run your business. So, Mark, you're coming to us tonight from the great state of Indiana.
Right.
Nice. This is kind of, with Jim Cerrone on last night. I mean, we're just kind of this Midwest thing going on.
Well, you should have him back tonight.
You were ready. Oh, fun,
just in case things start to go wrong.
Exactly. To bring it. If we start, we're going to talk music, so we need to channel some Jim tonight. So Mark, for the people who are kind of learning or meeting you for the first time tonight, give us a little kind of what you do in Indiana there with the entertainment side of things.
Well, I started in 1985, so this will be my 40th year, and I primarily focused on weddings, those types of events.
Yeah.
Especially the further I go along in my career, the more wedding-oriented I become. I was a subcontracting multi-op for 25 years. A few years ago, I decided to kind of scale back operations and focus on my own events to kind of simplify my life. I'm real happy with that decision. So I am, for the last 3 or 4 years, been a single op, and things are going great.
And you as a single op, and obviously if you've been doing this for 40 years, you're not 45 years old. But you keep very, very busy. I see pictures and different things that you're out there quite a bit during the course of a year.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I think when I was a multi-op, I mean, I had 6 or 7 guys out promoting my company, which is called Grapevine Productions, and they would bring leads in, and they really helped to develop my brand and recognition in town. Yeah,
exactly. But even that, eventually there's that attrition, that all those leads from those the staff over the years, that kind of narrows down. So it really is a testament that you've been, as a single op, so busy for so long, that the great testament to some of the things we're going to talk about later when it gets into some of the tools you use and some of the areas in which you have differentiated yourself. So before we get to that, though, I want to go back to a young Mark. Who was that first influence for you when you were just learning to love music as a child? Because most of us have got that one person or a couple of people who are that influential person in our lives. Who was that for you?
For sure. Growing up, it was my older sister who played the music in the basement. She had the Beatles records. She had the Three Dog Night. She had the Carpenters. The list goes on from that era. But my parents also played music. They were more into the jazz and big band and Doris Day. So, that's where the original interest in music came from. That was kind of the foundation. And then later in high school, in the 70s, I had, the great music of the 70s, from funk to soul to rock to folk to, there was so much variety of music in the 70s.
Yeah.
But I would also go to my local library in close by, and you could check out records. So I would go through the record bin because I didn't have a lot of money when I was,
Yep.
junior. So I'd just go through the record bins and check out records. Um, Leo Sayer, Joan Baez. I mean, I would just look. I wouldn't even know who these artists were, but the album covers looked interesting. And later on, when I did get a job, I would go to the record store, and often I would just buy records by looking at album covers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also a big fan of the radio. I grew up like you had Jim on last night. He's a child of the Chicago area, and so was I. I was a big listener of WLS and WMAQ, and I would stay up and be under my covers listening to. There was 50s radios out there, so I really got into 50s music and country music and rock and pop and all that. So I always kind of blanketed myself with music. It was always around.
Mm-hmm. So Sister was one of your first major influences when it came to the music side.
I have to give her credit. Yes.
Yeah. Have you had that discussion with her years later and basically say, you're part of the reason why?
Yeah, I did give her credit a few years ago.
Yeah, I had that conversation with one of my uncles. He had no idea how influential, because he loved it. In his situation, it was Tommy James. And you hear that in the car and you just there's something clicked, and that would have been as a goodness gracious 7 or 8 year old. When you all of a sudden just had that, and then all of a sudden you had a different appreciation for mom and dad's music when that time came.
Oh yeah, when my dad drove me around to school, he would put on the Louis Armstrong and Frank Sinatra and big band, Glenn Miller, and I was like, Dad. Turn this off. Now I love it.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how those times times change with that. Oh, cool! What a good story. So you said you started in '85 as a business. Were you doing anything for DJ then before you started it as the business side of it?
No, my story is I was in the military from 80 to 83. And oftentimes during that time, service people would go to the PX and get a nice stereo, which mine was a Kenwood stereo, the component in the big glass cabinet.
Oh yeah.
And so I was collecting music in the military, and also once I got out of the military, I was becoming a music collector. Nothing like I eventually became, but I had a nice record collection, and my father-in-law at the time was a local at a restaurant, bar, pub type place. And they were looking to have somebody play music on Friday nights. They wanted an oldies night. Mm-hmm. Well, I just happened to be a fan of music from the 50s and 60s. This was also when the Big Chill movie came out, and the California Raisins were out there promoting different products and records. And so he asked me if I might be interested in playing some music on Friday night.
Yeah.
And so that's where I got 2 mismatched turntables. I had my Kenwood receiver with the A/B switch.
Yep.
My Radio Shack microphone, which was, $15 battery powered microphone, horrible, a horrible mic.
Yep.
But that's where it started. And there really was no such thing that I had ever heard of as a mobile DJ. I mean, that's kind of where things started. I know there were some mobile DJs in the late 70s and early 80s, but I had never heard of one.
Yeah.
But I kind of got started in the infancy, and shopping for equipment. There really wasn't too much out there for DJs. It was all band related.
Very much so. And just a few things at Radio Shack is what we could find in our local market. And that 15, that little microphone, I probably have a variation of it still sitting, because it's like, I could throw this out, but it's like someday I might go into the museum.
Yeah, I eventually did get the Radio Shack mixer. It didn't take too long to find that baby.
Yeah. Oh, well, man, once we had that was big time. Woo.
Yeah, big improvement.
Oh, it was. From the AB, had I remember the Kenwood stereos. My friend of mine had the Kenwood, and that was something. That was a big time.
I DJ'd for a couple of years with Bose 301 speakers.
Mm-hmm.
I built my own speaker stands. I built my own facade, not knowing what a facade was.
Sure.
And that kind of set me apart, which we can get to a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was always kind of working on just trying to learn the DJ craft without knowing what DJs did.
Mm-hmm.
There really was no books, or of course, there were no online forums or anything at that
Anything
time.
like that,
So
yeah.
I kind of had to learn on my own.
And in many cases, as you were kind of saying earlier, is that there were no one else in the area was doing it. When we very first started, there were like one other person within 50 miles of us who was doing the DJ thing. So the only real influence we had was either watching bands or trying to figure out how would a radio DJ do this.
Exactly. I was living in an apartment, and a DJ who's still out there, a radio DJ, came out and did the pool party. His name is Bernie Egan. Jim Cerrone's worked with Bernie.
Nice.
His name might keep coming up, but anyway, Bernie Egan came out and did the pool party, and went, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's before I became a DJ, but I was like, okay. When I look back, I thought, okay, I remember that DJ from the pool party, and I could do something like that.
Mm-hmm. That became kind of it's like, okay, now we got to make sure we can do at least what they were doing, and then can we do something a little cool, and that's where you went back to Radio Shack and got that little strobe.
With the wood grain?
The wood grain strobe. Yeah. And you go and you plug it in quick. Yeah, look at that strobe. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm sharing too much, but I think a lot of people from our age can say, "Oh,
you could do a whole show on retro lighting." Yeah.
Oh my gosh! But
that's another. I rented my party light for at least a year because I couldn't afford this $100 light. It was a cylinder with little gel strips in it and a motor.
Yep.
And I would go to this audio supply house, and they had that, and I rented it for $10 a week.
Sure.
And until I could afford to spend $100 and buy one of my own.
Oh yeah, and it was having those beams of light going around the room. It's like, oh, this is really cool. We got something. Yeah.
It was very cool.
Oh, good times. Good times. So you mentioned setting yourself apart, and this is an area that you're really throughout your career has been kind of a goal of yours. Kind of give us kind of as you've gone through some of the things you have done that have really helped to be that element that did set you apart from a lot of others in your market.
Well, one of the things early on was realizing that I needed to be exceptional at customer service to set myself apart, because there were, after a few years, other DJs started coming on. And so the popularity of DJs started to increase. So I needed to find ways to beat my competition. So even though I had a full-time job, I didn't become I had a full-time job for 10 or 12 years before I could move into full-time. So back then, again, this is pre-computer, I hired an answering machine to answer my Yellow Page ad. So the potential client would get a live person rather than having to leave a recording. And then I'd have a beeper, and I would call the service and get my messages. So the customer never had to leave a recording. So I thought that was a kind of a way to set my service apart and to just capture those leads better than anybody else out there at the time.
Sure. Now at that time, this would have been, let's see, beepers and such. You're probably talking about really that early 90s.
Late 80s, probably early 90s.
Yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. Were there any, by this time, were you finding some resources for learning about some of these things, whether business related things like what you were just talking about, or was it something that you were really kind of still building or figuring it out on your own?
I was really still just figuring it all out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until the internet came along, the mobile forums. I did start running into other DJs, and we would kind of sit down and compare notes and talk about each other's experience. So, I guess we'd had some information exchange that way, and that's how I started it started with another DJ company who subcontracted me, and that increased, my learning process and all that. I eventually started subcontracting him more than he was subcontracting me, but it all worked out very well.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, when you work back and forth like that, and I think that learning, because I can, it's that old thing. If I have an idea and you have an idea, and if we share ideas, now we both have two ideas type of a situation. And I think it's really, when we're working with other DJs, it's a similar thing, is that I can learn some cool things from you. You can learn some cool things from me. And now we have twice the tools in our toolbox type of thing.
And at the time, I was doing weddings, and it's funny. I didn't used to come up with timelines and itineraries. I just was handed some notes and told to, could you announce the cake cutting? Oh, you want me to announce the cake cutting?
Yeah, that's where we were.
Okay,
yeah.
I guess so. So that was a big that evolved significantly over the years, and now we're creating the timelines. We're kind of running the show. If there's a wedding planner, we're kind of working hand in hand with them, but the clients really kind of depend on us to create the whole experience for the night.
So we're back. You were doing some things in that kind of early on with your calling and being able to connect with them quickly. Kind of continue us through. What are some of the other kind of major milestone type things that were setting you apart from the competition throughout the years?
I think it was the level of formality that I had compared to DJs who were a little more on the casual side. I used to go out in a black jeans and a white shirt, or maybe a shirt and tie. And then I was asked if I could dress up in a tux. And I said, okay, well, I got to go rent a tux. So I remember I rented a tux and I changed in the bathroom, and I came out and people were like,
"Oh, yeah.
Oh, you look nice." So I said, I like compliments. So I kept going back to rent that tux. And I've just always continued that, whether it's a black suit or a tux. I know, DJs have kind of gone away from that formal look, but I've kept with it. And that has kind of set me apart. I mean, there's other things. I'm a big problem solver. This is one of the things I admire about Brian Redd. He's a big problem solver,
Very much
and he likes to think outside the box. And I was working regularly at a mansion type venue called Laurel Hall here in town, and it has all these separate rooms. So the people would be really spread out. Well, I'm set up in a main room. How can I get music and announcements into all these separate rooms? Because I want everybody, I want it to be, I want everyone to feel a part, and for this to be more cohesive than everybody spread out. So I bought some antique radio reproduction, FM radios, and I bought a FM transmitter, like a, 3 watt or 3/10 of a watt. It's just a small radio transmitter that I hooked up to my mixer so I could transmit to these antique radios. And that worked out pretty well. The range was limited, but if I got the antenna high enough, I could transmit music and my announcements to all of these rooms. And then later on, I found a microphone system called Vocal Pro. The silent PA. So I took these radios like this, and I gutted them, and I built a little shelf, and I use a battery powered speaker with a Vocal Pro, and now and it's completely wireless, so I can set these go out very quickly into all of the rooms. So there's a couple different venues where I use those. Develop some other audio things to spread sound out and be decorative at the same time. So those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that being that problem solver and to be able to, especially in some of the unique places you guys perform down there, it's some beautiful estates.
Yeah,
and it's they need solutions like that, because it's just not like two speakers on a stick and off we go. You need to have more. I mean, some people do it, I'm sure, but that's not what the clients are going to be happy with at the end.
Oh, and clients, yeah, they absolutely go bonkers when I show them this. I become the guy to hire when they see those radios, because it's a perfect solution. It's decorative but functional too.
And these are the type of things, of course, that make you different, make you different even today, because there's things like you're still doing some of these things and other things. This fits into your sales process at some point in time. Are these the type of things that you put into when you're communicating in a pre-sales, or where do you talk about those speakers when you have someone who is in a place or a spot that those would be a great option?
Well, luckily, a lot of my work comes from wedding planners, and they spread the news. And then if they mention that I'm going to be at one of these venues, I say, here's an option for music. I have videos. It's really important to get good video and photo content so you can put this idea in front of the couple's eyes so they can imagine it for their own wedding. So more and more, I'm just taking pictures of everything, because eventually that's going to be a useful tool for sales. We'll see.
No, that's good, because you're really in that pre-sales when they come in and say, "Hey, Mark, we're going to be getting married at this venue," and you're going to be like, "Hey, that's a great venue, and there's some things that are really kind of cool," and You can have that conversation early on, and that really will help set you apart quickly, I would think, from other DJs in the market.
It does, yeah. Works well.
Definitely. So as you moved from a multi with Grapevine, and now you've moved back to a single op, did you change any of your branding or anything to that effect to kind of hone in more on you, or how to have your sales changed when you went from selling 5 or 6 shows a weekend down to 1?
Really didn't change all that much. I mean, the opportunity to turn into a solo op was somewhat forced on me because the number of weddings has diminished over the years. So, where I used to get 200 inquiries a year, now I'm down to maybe half or something like that.
Sure.
So again, I work with a lot of wedding planners and photographers. I mean, it's really important to develop those relationships with other vendors, because they're your best resource for, getting clients to call. They're your best salespeople.
For sure. Yes.
And I've noticed, this is something I was thinking about. I used to get all my business from past couples who would spread my name. I got married and Mark was great. You should hire him.
Yeah.
But I've talked to other DJs, and I don't know why we're not getting as many referrals from couples as we used to. It seems that way to me anyway, but they're, venues and photographers and wedding planners are my strongest lead builders.
And I've actually noticed a similar thing over the years. And one of the things I've attributed that to is that my couples that I used to perform for were generally in their early 20s. And they had many friends who were in that same age group. And it has been a string over the last few years of 30-year-old plus couples. And it's to the point of that, some of these, they don't have many of their friends that are getting married anymore. They're like the last one in the group. And at little things like that really start to affect. It's like,
and maybe it's just easier to find DJs online now. People don't have to rely on their friends for that information. They just do a go on the Knot or Wedding Wire or Google reviews and then find them themselves. Maybe they kind of want to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's
not copy their friend's wedding.
Very possible. Yeah, and there is definitely that, because I've heard that a few times. Like, we loved what you did, but can you do something different at our wedding than what you did there? Because we don't want it. We're gonna have some of the same guests, and we don't want the same things.
Yeah,
no problem. We can definitely do that. So, you've mentioned a couple of times other vendors making referrals, and that has been a great source. Talk a little bit about how you connect with some of the other vendors and have built those relationships.
Well, it's really just working side by side with them, being very flexible, being very accommodating, and just being easy to work with. I mean, other vendors are showing up on time, dressing nicely, being a good communicator, being that DJ who's a little more on the classier side. Not that I'm classy, but it's a part I play.
Yeah. Yep.
So having really clean sound systems, great sounding, but also great looking, just setting yourself apart any way that you can from, the average DJ out there.
Mm-hmm. And did obviously the aesthetics and your professionalism are part of that process, but do you contact some of the vendors outside of, okay, I may need to talk to the venue manager beforehand and I'll see him the day of, and, hey, do you connect at different times of the year with some of these vendors?
I should do more of that. I should reach out ahead of time, but they kind of know me and I know them, and we've worked so often together. It's like, I'm going to be working at a venue. There's an AV guy at the venue, and he mentioned that the head banquet person, told him that Mark's coming and there's nothing to worry about. So, he said, it's nice to have a reputation like that. So,
for sure.
I will. It depends on the complexity of the event. If it's a very complex event, then I will send out a timeline and just to compare notes, make sure there's no conflicts with their schedules. But that is one thing I should be doing more of. Admitted.
Even though you made a great point, is that you have developed a long-term relationship with some of these people where they know who Mark is. They know they know pretty much what to expect, meaning that you're not going to show up drunk, you're not going to show up belligerent, that you're competent, you're professional, and you're going to get the job, and you're going to do a really good job. They know
it's that high bar of not showing up drunk.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. Well, and unfortunately, that is for our DJ industry. Sometimes that is a high bar, but it's that. And I've had a similar situation over the years. Is that you have a venue that they know you so well, and it's like I could go and I could sit down. We'd end up talking about their kids more than we would be talking about the wedding, because I know how they work, they know how I work, and
exactly.
And once we have kind of a timeline between the two of us, we're like, yep, we can make this timeline work, and we know exactly where each other's going to be plugging in and doing things. So, yeah, that familiar experience, just huge. I miss that because most of my people have moved away and have taken other jobs. Mark, one of the things when I think of you, and I've followed you over the years, is one of the things I think you are is a student of our industry, and you have really spent a lot of time, and you bring in information from a lot of sources, and have that learning is a big thing for you. How do you keep motivated to continue to invest that kind of time in your learning? As we've been you're getting into your fourth decade of performing.
Well, it comes down to just being fascinated by this industry. There are so many facets, from the performance to the music to the marketing to the equipment to the psychology of sales, how couples have changed. Also, I'm a huge fan of DJ Event Planner. It has streamlined my business so much and given me so much more free time. It really has. It's an amazing tool once you can wrap your head around it, because trying to learn it is like, I shouldn't say, it's a little bit like learning Chinese. But once you have it, I couldn't live without it. But it's really given me a lot of free time. So I spend too much time on YouTube and looking at DJs channels and seeing what the current trends are, not paying attention to all of them, taking a lot of it with a grain of salt. But I also just want to stay relevant. I don't want to be, I'm in my 60s, so I don't want to become that DJ with the music note vest, still playing music that the client's parents have, are into. Equipment wise, I've moved to the Denon Prime Go, which is just has so much built-in technology. for me, I'm still learning all of its capabilities, and it's in such a small package.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think it's just I'm just passionate about the whole industry. I feel so fortunate to be able to still be in this at in my old age.
So your favorite, when you're doing a performance, a wedding performance, what part of the wedding day, if you're involved with the ceremony, so ceremony, cocktail, and throughout, and dance, what parts just are the things that when you experience that or you have done that, you're like, yeah, that's why I do what I do. What part really just keeps you into this industry doing those things?
When I arrive at an event and the guests start coming in, and I see how they're a little apprehensive, they've never been maybe they've never seen this venue before. They're kind of experiencing it for the first time. They're not sure what to expect. They're kind of excited, but they're also maybe a little bit apprehensive. They're going to be meeting new people that they've never met before. And when they melt in, when they all start becoming a part of this singular experience
Mm-hmm.
for the couple that they're coming to celebrate, it's it's groups of people who will never be together again, and they just start laughing and relaxing, and their shoulders drop, and they start tapping their toes, and they start laughing, and you see them maybe come in from the cocktail hour to the dining room, and they're just all smiles and having a great time. That's and I also kind of judge a guess how the night's going to go by how loud they are during the cocktail hour. So if they're really
Yep.
loud, I say this is going to be an easy crowd.
Yep.
And if they're not, if they're kind of on the quieter side, it's like I've got a little bit of work to do. So trying to figure out those angles is it's still challenging, of course, but it's a lot of fun. But
Mm-hmm.
just being able to, this is an escape. A wedding or a party is just an escape from everybody's challenging lives.
Yeah.
So being a part of their escape is very rewarding for me.
For sure. For sure. Oh, I definitely understand that. That's you're describing much of the kind of that cocktail time and that early time of the evening. And as I've talked to my boys about this, and it's like that becomes when you can help create those moments and you create those, oh, that was so cool, the type of a situation early in the night. That's what I live for why I still do weddings. Not to dance. I could, it's cool when the crowd's out there and they're bouncing and then you put a song on and they're like, yeah, that's neat. But it doesn't do it for me like it used to. It used to be like we lived for that the cheer between songs. Yeah, not so much. I like you described it well with the bringing two groups or multiple groups of strangers together and to have them having an experience, a unified experience, and coming together to celebrate the bride and groom. I get that. That drives me.
Well, my wife is my sounding board. She's a great advice giver. I give her so much credit. And I was telling her the other night, I was going to be interviewed by you. And one of the things I was thinking about is couples, and we might even think that we're being hired to provide music and announcements, but we're really being hired to provide peace of mind. We're kind of we're being hired to create an experience,
Mm-hmm.
and not just with music, but just make sure nothing goes wrong, and that they don't have to stress over all of the details.
Exactly. And then when you've built that reputation, as you're referring to with some of the vendors, they see that you can create and do that and have a fun and not all of a sudden having this really stressful moment for the couple or family or whatever. Those things, they get noticed because not everybody does that. Not everybody can do that. For sure. Okay, so there's a couple more things. I want to get into the. You've talked about in some of our conversations about a survey that you do when it comes to, we talked a little bit earlier about when you first are communicating with a client, but you've got a survey that you have been using with some success, and this has really helped that sales process. Let's talk a little bit about your style survey.
Yeah, I just started this a few months ago, so it's kind of an experiment in process, but it's going really, really well. And I know it's not unique to myself. I'm sure other companies, maybe even other DJs do this. But before I have a conversation with a couple, either usually through Zoom or a phone call, whatever it might be, after we set up our meeting, I do a follow-up and say, just to get to know you a little bit before our conversation, what your expectations are. I send out a what I call a style survey, which includes a lot of the questions that I would be asking them during the Zoom or phone conversation. Not all of them, because I hold some back because I want to have some ammo for the actual conversation.
Right.
But I send out this style survey, and it gives them a chance to take their time to answer these important questions.
Yes.
To really not just give me a one sentence answer, but when they have time to write about it and think about it, when they're not put on the spot, they give me so much detail than what I was getting just with a sales call. And they write a book practically. Yep. Some people don't write so much, and some people don't return that style survey at all, which tells me they might be a little more on the reserve side, or maybe they're just shopping around. So there's a lot of ways that I'm finding to use this style survey. And I also, I have a record of their survey, which I can look back on, like before we do our planning meeting. I can look back on it and kind of refresh my memory that way.
Nice.
If there's something really interesting or poignant in what they've written, we can expand. I'll kind of target and expand on that and tell them, exactly what I can do with that idea or that concept, or maybe it's something they're afraid of or hesitant of, and I could reassure them that that's not going to happen. Things like that.
Sure. Kind of give us an example maybe of some of the discussion points that are on that style survey for someone who has never heard of such a thing.
It's really your standard questions that you might ask during that sales call. Let's see, do I have one here? Tell me about the mood and ambience you'd like for your reception. Levels of tradition. Is it going to be a traditional wedding, or you're going to skip some of those? Music preferences. How they, let's see, we talk about customization and personalization, if they want any of those sorts of things. If they already have an idea of the timeline and flow, and I know they don't have an idea of the timeline and flow, but I want them to know that that's something that I'm going to be working on with.
Yes.
Yeah. DJ interaction, if they want somebody who's a little more outgoing or a little bit more reserved, and I'm on the more reserved side. So if they want a very interactive DJ who's going to lead line dances and do raise the roofs, and so I'm not the guy for them. Mixing style, if they like, if they like quick mixes, or if they like the songs left intact, just things like that.
Right. Yeah. Just a variety of different things. And I like the idea that, as you mentioned, you're getting it to them so they can look at it, think about it, instead of giving you just that off from the hip answer. Because later they may be like, that answer, while it was an answer, it wasn't really a good reflection of us.
Yeah.
And how many times that has happened where I've been in that face-to-face planning meeting, and I'm asking some of the questions very similar to what you're talking about there, and they give you an answer, and then either later they've changed it, or I get an email saying that, we probably want to change that, or the night after you're like, this is not what we talked about. Because, yeah.
I also don't want my meetings to drag on for 45 minutes or an hour. People are very, people are too busy for a super long sales meeting.
Yeah.
And especially, when they used to come to my home office, they seem to have more time, but on a Zoom or a phone chat, they seem to not have. I can see them shifting in their seats, and they're ready to move on.
Yeah. It's just you get this window, and you either monopolize.
I want to keep them interested. Yeah.
Yeah, for that 10 to 15 minutes you have them, because after that, The attention span is gone.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So yeah, you've been utilizing that, and when you're sending that out and such, you were saying there's a variety of different. Some fill it out it's a little bit, a lot. How many people? I mean, as far as if you were kind of breaking into percentages, how many people aren't returning it whatsoever, but yet are communicating with you? Are there 10%, 15% that might still be communicating, but even though they didn't fill it out very at all?
Like I said, this is been kind of a new thing. I've only been using it for a few months, and so I'm still just figuring out how to send it out, when to send it out. So I would say about half of the couples are filling it out. They love the idea. They're thrilled to talk about their event, or put their mind to paper. And then some couples are saying, we're going to fill that out after we talk to you, and then that's fine too. I'm finding lots of different ways to use this thing.
Yeah, I've got a variation that I use, not to the depth of what you're doing. And I have sometimes when I send, they're looking for some early information, that's part of that packet of information that goes out. And there have been times I haven't even talked to them yet where they want to, okay, can we chat on Zoom call next week? Great. Oh, and by the way, here's all the answers. It's like, oh, okay, great. I now have their whole backstory type of a thing. They were just excited, and yay, wonderful.
It's also another way to build a relationship, especially since I'm not meeting people in person as much. I still have the option for them to meet with me, but it's just a lot easier to do the Zoom thing. So building relationships can be a little tougher. So I want them to know that I really care about their event. I'm really interested in what they have to say. And when you can become a better listener, the person will like you more. And if they like you more, if you make a mistake during the event, they won't hold it against you.
Very much so. And people do business with people they like. I mean, that all goes together so well. So well indeed. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why we have this conversation with the kids is that mom's newspaper, yes, newspapers are a dying thing, but her little newspaper is so popular yet because the people like her. And they like to do business with people they like. So great little tidbit there. Speaking of print media, huh? How do you like that bridge there?
Ooh, it's slick.
You're a student of our industry, and you're a student of business. And you mentioned a book that you wanted to talk about a little bit. So tell us a little bit about a Joe Galloway book.
There are two books. They're kind of my North Star, my foundation of sales. I'm thinking about sales. One of them is Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith.
Yes.
And I just re-listened to it for probably the 20th time this past week. It's a very short book. So you get the audiobook, and Spotify offers audiobooks along with your subscription. So I just re-listened to it on Spotify. It's only an hour and a half listen. But the other one is called Be the Best at What Matters Most by Joe Galloway. And the takeaway, or Joe Calloway, sorry. And the takeaway from that book is to be the best at the basics. Just before you start doing fancy things, just get those basics down better than anyone. And if you can do that, you will be way ahead of the crowd. Whether it's with sales or emceeing or customer relations. Just always improve. If you think you've nailed it, you haven't. You need, let's see, 1% Solution by Randy Bartlett. Just always keep improving.
Oh, very much so.
Improving on the basics. Yeah.
That's so huge. I mean, coming from a coaching and athletic world, that is something that throughout it is, you're not going to be able to go and, dunk a basketball until you can do the basics of moving with the ball or, do whatever. If you can't do the basics, you're not going to be successful.
It's the exact same principle.
Principle there. That's why people are like, well, why do some teams, why are they so successful for so many years? And 9 chances out of 10, it's because they do the basics and they do them well. And that correlates to our businesses, which goes all the way back to your early times. And one of the basic things with a business is to get back to the customer very quickly. And that was really kind of a founding thing you did right out of the gate.
Yeah. My customers, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I always put the customer first, because they want instant answers. So I provide instant answers. If I'm on a beach in Jamaica, I have my phone with me. They're going to get an answer before I go get another red stripe. At night, we talked about this, kind of maintaining boundaries between business and personal life. And after my wife comes home from school, I kind of shut off the business unless I get a hot lead, and I will go straight to the computer. And whether it's 10 o'clock at night, they're going to get an answer.
Sure.
And luckily, DJ Event Planner makes it very easy to give them a personalized response very quickly.
Yeah, so when you got it set up, it is an incredible tool. There's a little bit of a setup time. There's no question about it, but anything of value, it takes a little time to get it set up and set up well.
Yeah, also Calendly is a great tool that I use. I know everybody should be using some sort of a schedule. Keeps things on tracks. It makes it easy for the client, makes it just so organized to get your schedule sorted out.
Yeah. Just little things like that help it so you're not having to try to remember all of, wasting brain cells. Okay, what do I have on the schedule for tomorrow? You don't have to worry about that, or what's on the schedule
or going back and forth with text. Hey, are you available tomorrow at 5:30? No, but how about 3:30? 3:30 doesn't work for me. How about 1?
It's on the calendar. It's good. I can forget about it and then just check about it as I'm coming up. It's like, okay, today I've got this, and this, and it's great. Okay, let's go.
Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of like why, DJs always wear black, is because then we don't have to spend a lot of time looking in the closet and saying, what color should I wear today? Black. We're good. Mark, good stuff. If people would like to kind of reach out and had some questions about whether I've already seen a couple of people mention the radios. They remember seeing pictures of that and were wondering. And I think somebody had a question for that. And I didn't catch it as it rolled through. But if somebody has some questions, what's the best way to reach out to contact you?
I'll probably just go to my website, grapevinedj.com. That has links to my email. I was going to say Pinterest, Instagram. So that's the best way.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah.
Got my phone number, which is also
out there on the website
for texting. Yeah. So
yeah.
grapevinedj.com.
Yeah. You guys can go check that out. And if you have any questions or the style survey, that's actually something that I've heard more DJs who have been adding that in the last probably 6 months than I've heard before. So when you mentioned that, it's like, oh yeah, that's a topic I'm hearing more and more, where people are getting a survey out like that ahead of time, and it seems to be kind of connecting with some of the younger folks today, where they can literally sit down and have that conversation. It's like, fiance, what do you think we should do for this? It's a great tool. I think there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, relating to customers today is a lot different than it was 5 years ago.
5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We've been around to see the evolution of.
But even just 5 years ago, couples were different.
Yeah, it changed so much. Yeah, I found it's never a good idea to tell the kids, say, your parents were much easier to sell to as an entertainment. That probably doesn't sit well.
I'm sure you've done shows about how couples have changed over the years. All the differences. There's tons of them.
Oh, there are. And it's one of the things that keeps it interesting, because if it would be the same old, then we would move on and go do something else. So
yeah, we'll call it interesting.
That's what we'll do. So, Mark, thank you much for being on. I've been looking forward to our time together tonight. Great information. Again, you guys can go and reach out to Mark if you have some questions and such. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes. We're going to be back with Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe, and we're going to be talking about Kyle's experience with some of the stuff at NAMM this year. And now Ben's going to talk about some of the stuff that has been released and give us a little more insight into some of those new products. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Good night, everybody.